Hello everybody and welcome back to the Pennsylvania Berwind. This is episode number 19. Thank you for joining me once again. And I think I am always gonna chuckle anytime I say welcome back after that New Year's video. Hope you guys enjoyed that. The feedback was great. If you haven't watched it yet, I did a year-end recap video of all the builds I did for 2017. Go check it out. It is my most previous video from this one. And disclaimer to you guys who are new here, none of those routes, actually, the only route that is available in that video is needles. And that's available on jointedrail.com. You can find it there. The other routes, I'm still working on packaging up and sorting out so that I can get them released to you guys as soon as possible. So, on to today's episode. This is going to be a slightly shorter episode than usual. It's I guess, kind of a smaller build for one thing, but also I didn't really kick off New Year's 2018 on the right foot. And if you follow me on Instagram, you'll know that that is a little bit of a pun because I fell down the stairs just before New Year's, and that just totally set me on the wrong course for the last couple of weeks. So things have been a little bit crazy on my end, and that's not the only thing that's been going on. But anyway, let's get into this build and talk about what's going on here. After I had done the live stream with Bill M, we ran a train from Allegheny out to Mill Creek, and this is one area that is between Allegheny and Huskins. So I'll show you in the outro. We're just outside of Huskins Gravel, and this is one of my favorite scenic areas. And a lot of you guys expressed interest in this area, that you liked it. So I figured, you know, it needed some work. It needed to be updated. If you noticed in the very beginning, one of the first bits of this clip, I put a auto rack underneath the bridge that I had there, and it was clipping into it, so the bridge was not big enough, so I needed to replace the bridges so that I could run larger trains. So that was the first order of business. I also wanted to update some of the scenery in this area and bring it up to the standards that I have for the rest of the map. And that involved raising the rail bed a little bit higher and doing some more scenery detail. So I'm going to explain what my logic was behind some of this, and you'll have to excuse me, I'm getting over another cold. This is just what happens when you work in a school like I do. You just get sick all the time. So excuse me if I sound a little bit raspy or if I growl a little bit. So what I started off doing in the very beginning of this build here is raise up the track bed. I really liked the idea of a low bridge over this waterway here, and I'm kind of picturing this as like a floodplain sort of estuary area, and it's inspired a lot by the Hudson River and the Adirondack Mountains and areas that I hung out around when I was growing up, and a lot of those kind of scenic areas. So this is kind of like a floodplain, very shallow sort of water area. And it reminds me of a lot of places that my dad used to take me to go fishing and stuff like that. So I thought it was a really nice thing to include on here. And I was really inspired by the idea of these low bridges, just railroad trestle that is just over top of the water. So if you're out in a fishing boat, in a rowboat, you could get under it, but you know, just barely. Maybe like a small motorboat could get underneath, but it's not high enough for larger ships to get underneath. It's not a drawbridge. This is not like a main waterway for big ships or anything like that. This might just be a little creek, a little river somewhere through the mountain range. So I was really inspired by having the bridge kind of low. So I wanted to keep that, but it felt a little bit too low, at least for the roadbed, considering that this is supposed to be kind of a floodplain. So I imagined that the railroad would want to build the track up a little bit higher so that when the water does raise up, it doesn't overflood and overtake the railroad tracks themselves. So I raised up the roadbed by, I don't know, a couple of feet or so, and I kept it still low enough so that boats can just slip underneath, and I still had that sort of low bridge look that I was going for, but it was high enough that it felt realistic, and that was my first order of business, and I am way behind on talking about what is happening on the screen. So the next thing I did was I sculpted the terrain around the roadbed. And what I did for that was I first used the track leveling tool, you know, to bring up the terrain underneath the track. And the thing that I don't like about that is that it's very angular and it's very wide. It's not realistic. It's good for doing cuts and stuff like that, but in terms of doing fills, I really don't like the way that it looks. I think it's too wide and it's just too angular. So what I did is I went through with the leveling tool and I just went down the edges and just kind of smoothed it out a little bit. I had the sensitivity really high and I used kind of a large brush, but when you use the leveling tool, it kind of evens out the area so you get a little bit more of a smooth gradient. And you don't have to worry about, I feel like a lot of people are intimidated by that tool because everybody wants these nice smooth slopes, and it's really easy to screw up, but just don't worry about messing up. You can go back, you can use the terrain height tool going up or going down, or the smoothening tool to even it out. And I just find that the smooth tool really helps level things out. And if you mess something up, you can just hit it with that and bring it right back down to normal. It kind of averages it out if you use it right. And if you go back a little bit and watch when I had it on the wire mode, or the grid mode or whatever, you could see how it just kind of begins to even out the turf a little tiny bit. So anyway, moving on to what is actually happening here. Again, my idea was to have this as sort of a floodplain, so I didn't want a whole lot of vegetation in the lower area. I like the idea of the tracks being exposed, being out in the open. We come out of this sort of tunnel of forest, and here we are out on this floodplain. We go across a couple of bridges, and then on the other side, heading towards Allegheny Yard, we go through some farmlands. And one thing that you'll know about farmlands is they tend to be located very close to floodplains, and that's because it's very fertile soil. Fertile, whatever. So the soil tends to be very good for planting crops there. So adjacent to this floodplain here, we have some farmlands, and it just has this really great effect, in my opinion. It just looks nice to see the train come out of like this tunnel of trees. We've just gone through like some very overgrown areas, and here we emerge in this sort of swampy but open area, beautiful sort of open scene. So again, I was keeping the terrain low, and I didn't want to add too many trees in the floodplain because trees can't really take root when it's kind of soggy mud, you know? So I used a lot of this low brush and grasses and some shrubs and stuff like that. And I would have went a little bit more crazy with the reeds, but they really do kill frame rates, like really bad. So I went easy on them, and you'll see in a few moments here, it does get a little bit, I use them sort of sparingly in places that, you know, I add a couple and it gets the effect across without having to use a whole huge population of them. And I think the other thing that helps with the scene is that I think it's only one baseboard wide, maybe it's two. So it's pretty shallow, and that sort of helps, and it's sort of a disadvantage too, and I'll show you that in the outro why it's kind of a disadvantage. But the advantage is that because the game doesn't have to render so much around it, you can go a little bit more detail crazy with these shallower scenes. This game's not spending time rendering stuff in the background, so you could put some more detail heavy, polygon heavy type items more in the foreground and save yourself some frames by just not having stuff in the background. So that's one thing that kind of helped this area stay in pretty good shape, and even by the end of it, on my computer, I've got a high-end computer, but I was still getting 60 frames per second while recording. So, and it wasn't dipping, it was very stable, so even with a lot of the vegetation that I was using, it didn't seem to cost me too many frames, which is good, because I'm trying to keep you guys in mind when I'm doing this, and to a point, because I want to make sure you guys can run this, but at the same time, like, this is kind of like an art for me. This is an art project, really, for me, at the end of the day. So I don't want to, like, put some kind of, like, hindrance on myself because of, you know, whatever. I'm trying to, like, fit into some kind of constraints. I want it to look cool, and I want it to look cool for a reason. If it doesn't work for some people, it's just not going to work. And that's just how it is, unfortunately. Okay, so moving on. Now I'm going around to these little islands that I have here. And again, this is supposed to be kind of a wetland estuary sort of thing. Just picture this water being very shallow and maybe getting very deep in the spring and summertime when there's a lot of rains. So maybe some of these islands begin to disappear summertime. They re-emerge when the water's a little bit lower. So again, I wanted some sort of sparse vegetation on it, some big trees that maybe had some time to take root. Maybe there was a couple years where there was a drought and a few big trees were able to dig in really deep into the muck and really take root. But for the most part, there's lots of mud and lots of shrubs and grasses and stuff like that, like low-lying stuff that when the floods come in, they're not really going to be too affected by it. They're not going to get washed away. but I still wanted some green in there, so I'm putting down some of this green texture because I can't model all of the grass that's there, right? I can't put down blades of grass for everything, as much as I would love to. You gotta have some sort of, you know, background, whatever you call it, texture, blur, or whatever. You're not gonna go all the way over there and get a photograph or anything like that, so there's no need for really tall grass or anything like that. So some of those green grass textures work really well, combined with that mud, and here I'm putting some more of this grass vegetation like on top of the water to represent, I don't know what kind of vegetation it is. Not reeds, but, you know, some kind of muck and pond scum sort of grass. I don't even know. I don't know what grows in swamps and wetlands. I don't know what it is, but you get the idea. There's some vegetation that's growing in there, and I think the effect is pretty cool. We'll take a look in depth in live mode. And I'm kind of winging this right now. I don't have any show notes for this one. Like I normally have like a whole list of things that I want to go over, but I'm kind of winging it on this one because I've been sick all week, so I haven't had time to like get my thoughts together. And I'm doing this literally the night before I'm trying to release it. So let's see what happens. So here I'm just taking a look at the scene itself, eyeballing it, and making sure that I like everything. And I'm going to add a few more details here. I found a few boats on the download station that I think look pretty good. Like again, I didn't want to do anything too big. So I looked for some small fishing boats and some rowboats and stuff like that. I couldn't find any fishermen like that were not like paper cutouts. Like, so if anybody knows of any decent fishermen, let me know, because I like to put a couple people fishing down there. It'd be kind of neat. Got this sunken boat here, and I think I did a couple more details as well. But we're almost at the end of the time lapse, so I'm gonna cut it off here, and I'll see you guys in live mode in just a moment. Alright dudes, here we've arrived at the end of the episode. Again, sorry that this is a little bit shorter, but let's take a look at a few more things here. First thing I would like to note, and I get asked this quite frequently, is what asset is that? What asset are you using? Approach medium? So to answer that question, so I don't have to answer it so many times in the comments, and I want you guys to know, if you look down here in the lower right, there is a QUID number, and that is the number of the asset that I'm using. So if I'm ever doing something during the build that you are curious and you'd like to use yourself, you could pause the video and just look down there and you can get the QUID number and plug that right into Content Manager for the download station, and you can find it and download it yourself. So that's a first order of business I would just like to mention right there. And woo! We're flying around. This is a great scene, I must say. I am quite happy with this. And the first thing, I guess this would be the second thing. The thing to address here is the shallow scene. So as I was saying during the time lapse, there's some advantages and some disadvantages to having a shallow scene. Right now I'm getting over 60 frames per second. I know we're not actually running any trains right now, but a lot of that is due to the nature of this scene. That it is very shallow, and that's great, except for the fact that you could see the baseboards back here. So I have not yet decided what I'm gonna do about that. If I want to add another 1 or 2 baseboards over here to sort of disguise that, and it's the same going in this direction as well. Actually, this direction is even worse. That's actually a lot worse. Let's just never look over this way. Yeah, so, you know, it's tough for me because doing these background elements, like, to go beyond this scene is just so unimportant to me. I really don't, I'm kind of bothered by this, seeing the tiles and stuff back here, just from, like, a photographic standpoint. Like, if I want to do screenshots or something like that, I'll have to tweak it. But from an operating point of view, like, I really don't care. The fact that like this doesn't exist over here, it really doesn't bother me. It's like a model railroad, you know, you just model the scenes that you need to model, you know, to get the job done, so to speak. So I'm kind of undecided. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below, if I should add another baseboard and continue the scene a little tiny bit. Maybe, I don't know, maybe I could fake something somehow. Maybe I could even take a screenshot of this and make a backdrop somehow. That might be kind of cool if I could do that. I don't know, I wouldn't even really know how to do that, but that might be something worth investigating. Anyway, so again, my original plan for this video was to do a little bit more work rather than just in this area. I wanted to continue on down this way, but my time was short. I got like a nasty cold this week. I'm still getting over it, so I ran out of time. I wanted to get you guys something, so there wasn't a huge gap in videos, but let me just show you where we are contextually speaking. So this is Huskins gravel, right up here. So we are, I don't know, probably a mile away, less than a mile away, something like that. So I got to do a little bit of scenicking through here and do the waterfront through here as well. That'll be something I do off camera, I think. Coming up into this, I did raise the grade a little bit. I'll have to even out the ballast through here as well. Man, my phone is just going off like crazy right now. I'm gonna put that away. So I do have to touch that up just a little tiny bit. Like I was saying, when you're using the smoothing tool, you can upset the terrain a little tiny bit, but that's really not that hard to fix. If you just, it's the plateau tool. Plateau. So if you just kind of grab it and just figure out the spot that you want to bring it up to, I even turn the sensitivity up even higher, and then just bring it up just a little tiny bit. You do a little bit at a time, and you can raise it up. What I'm doing is I'm going from the highest point to the lowest point to even it out. So it's higher, the track is higher over here than it is here. So I can bring the road bed up to the base. And you just do this a little bit. It can be kind of time consuming, but the effect is really good. What I was doing, I think I was using a brush that was probably about this size or so, and it definitely helps kind of keep things evened out very nicely. And so that's that. And again, here were these reeds. I probably could go with a little bit less in some areas, but again, like back here, I was kind of using them sparingly to just get the effect across without using too many of them. So I think that works out pretty nicely. And I'll do a little bit more work down here. I did replace the track here on the P&B, the whole length of it. This is now the new mainline track. So I have to work this out. If you follow me on Twitter, I mentioned this, I've been talking about it, that I'm running into some issues with updating my track. The track that I was using is not really easily accessible anymore. It's like a French track, it's on a French website, and it's not really a good track to be using for Trainz a New Era. So I wanted to update to some new jointed rail track, some stuff that looks a lot better, and this is what I picked, but unfortunately this is the club car track. So I have to work this out if I'm going to be able to use this, or if I have to kind of tweak it and reskin it, or how that's going to work exactly. So I'll do a little tweaking to that and figure that out, and I'm also swapping out some of the track along the sidings and stuff like that. And along that whole path, I have to do all of the ballast as well, which you'll see, here's the transition. So this is the old ballast that I was using, and this is the new ballast. So there's a big difference in quality. And in fact, I was using, when I was putting this ballast down, what do I have clear here? When I was putting, wow, this is glitchy. When I was putting it down, I actually had the scale turned up high, which is not something I usually do too often. I usually keep it really low, but let's take a look at it low for a second. It just looks too powdery, and it doesn't match into the, maybe it does match a little bit better. I don't know, I might have to mix it a little bit, but I thought it looked a little bit better with the scale turned up. A little bit more granular. But yeah, that was my decision there for that. All right, so the second half, I accidentally clicked into window mode and the recording stopped, and I definitely did not realize it until I started to edit here. So the second half, or the second part, the last part of that outro was cut off, unfortunately, and I did listen to it back, and I have to apologize that my cadence in my voice was a little bit slower. I think that's because of this cold and the cough medicine and stuff that I'm taking, so I apologize for that. Anyway, the very last thing that I would like to mention to you guys is that in the next couple of weeks or months, my videos may be a little bit more sparse than normal, and there's two reasons for that. The first one is the main central dem file that we're using is giving us some problems. We're having some weird errors with the terrain sort of disappearing, and things that we've built disappearing and then reappearing and stuff. So we're not sure what's going on with that, so I don't really know when the next main central video is going to be. We have to sort of resolve that stuff before we can do any more building. Hopefully it doesn't end up like corrupted or something like that. We can continue on. So there's that. The other thing that I want to mention about the videos being a little bit more sparse is that I'm going to be doing some more off-camera work, and that is going to be doing things like creating sessions for Union Terminal and the Appalachian Central, as well as the P&B, and doing some other P&B off-camera type stuff, such as signaling here, speed limits, and things that don't necessarily make for very good video making. Things that I'll probably do during a few live streams. Like I'll probably do like a session building live stream sometime in the future. But things that are just not very good for YouTubing, but things that need to get done in order to get some of this stuff out for you guys. I did plan to get Union Terminal and the Appalachian Central out soon, but when I do release it, I would like there to be some kind of something for you guys to do, some kind of a session or scenario or something, whatever it's called, some kind of an operating session for you guys to get introduced to it. So I will be working on those things off camera, and I will do some live streams on that kind of stuff. But I thought I'd just let you guys know if you don't see a video next week or the following week, whatever. I will do my best to release what I can, but the videos may be a little bit shorter, sort of like this one. And they may be a little bit more sparse. So that said, that is going to do it for this episode, guys. Thank you so much for joining me once again for another riveting episode on the Pennsylvania Berwind. I hope you guys all had a happy new year, and I will see you guys in the next one. Take care.